Tag, you're it. I'm Amanda Malcolm, and you're listening to You're It Girl, a podcast focused on you and what propels you. Because that past, it does not define you. Your time is now, and you're it, girl. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to You're It Girl. If you have been listening, I just wanted to say thank you. And if you have not listened to the first two episodes, I've said this the last couple episodes, but do go back and listen to those very first two, as it sets the context for pretty much everything and anything that we are talking about today and moving forward. And in the past couple episodes, we have talked a bit about relationships, which we are going to talk about today with the guest that we have on the show. And her name is Senya Lee. Senya, thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
Thank you. I'm very excited to have you. If you just would give us a brief little history of yourself and where you're from and how you ended up in Arizona.
Oh, yes. So I'm originally born in Korea. I'm officially American citizen, but I was born in Seoul, Korea, South Korea. A lot of people ask me that question. Are you from North or South? It's a very silly question, but I know there are North Koreans here too. I moved to America when I was 10 years old, and with my father, mother, my older sister, and my younger brother. The rest of the family stayed behind. So back in 2000, we moved here abruptly, and that was actually one of the most traumatic experiences all of us actually experienced. Each of us kind of went through a very interesting time because it was an abrupt disruption in our life.
What was abrupt about it?
Well, we had to flee the country like overnight.
Oh my goodness.
Because my father now it's all done and completed so I could talk about it. My father made a financial mistake. Just like he wrote, he co-signed for another friend, and then they went bankrupt, and then the government came after us. And so we were actually living pretty well off, upper middle class, I would say. And then we went into a 1-bedroom apartment in Glendale, California.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I've actually not talked about this publicly before, but a lot of my friends do know about the story. But I feel like that was kind of what exacerbated my trauma story, I guess. It's just
most definitely.
Yeah.
I couldn't even, just leaving where you were born and that is your home, and then coming to a complete different country. Did you speak English?
No, I did not speak English. None of us were prepared
that
for this.
Alone.
Yeah, that alone.
And you're 10, you're going to school now.
Yeah.
Elementary school.
I was in ESL for 3 years. And then
gosh, it's crazy. You can't even tell.
I know. A lot of people are like, oh, you don't have an accent. That's so crazy. Yeah, I don't. But it's funny because you could see the difference in my siblings. My older sister, she does have an accent when she speaks English, the Korean accent comes through, and it's so funny. And my younger brother, he has an accent when he speaks Korean. You can tell he's really Americanized. But I came at that sweet spot.
Yes.
So 10 years old, if anyone is wanting to move with their children.
You'll lose the accent then, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, I do speak Korean very fluently. I read and write Korean as well. So I work for Asian Media Network, doing that kind of services. But yeah, just my history, kind of coming into the Western civilization was a huge shocker for me.
Yes.
And just to just culturally, spiritually, and socially, and it's just so different. And I think there are a lot of immigrants that come from many different countries, but actually, especially for Asians, I think we feel it the most. And I've been feeling really called to kind of share stories about, share my story so that others can have the space to talk about their story as well, because I feel like there's not enough of that Asian representation. And I think it's starting to happen a lot more in the movie industry and things like that, which is really beautiful, but also there's just not enough. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But yeah, I have a very interesting background. I'm not just Korean. I'm very rooted in the traditional way of living as a Korean, like I would say like spiritually.
Uh-huh.
I know now like it's 98% of 98% of Koreans are Christian today, but it wasn't like that before. You know, we used to be all Buddhist at some point.
Oh, fascinating.
Right? Isn't that fascinating? I would say we've been whitewashed, westernized, you know, pretty severely, to the point I feel like a lot of people have lost touch with their roots.
Mm-hmm.
And so have I, you know, like living in the US. But yeah, like that has been like a really present thing for me to kind of like think about and share and like talk about with a lot of my friends. Like I'm actually having a Korean feast, like dinner party in July to like bring all my Korean sisters. And really like I'm in this space of really like empowerment, I guess, like just really owning who I am. With everything that I will talk about today, I am really feeling blessed to be in this state of like just full acceptance of who I am.
Yes.
After healing through all these, a lot of trial and tribulations and horrific events, you know, which I'm sure we all have a different version of that. So, yeah, like I was bullied a lot as a child. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere, like literally anywhere. Like even if it was my family, I didn't feel like I belonged because it's the family dynamic with the patriarchal, dynamic that, you know, it's very apparent in Korea. And there is a feminist movement that's happened. You know, I think they established themselves back in 2015, and they are coming on strong now. And it all makes sense if you do know much about like the Asian cultures. Patriarchy is extremely, extremely prominent, I would say, and very strong. And then I could see it in my parents' dynamic today, where, you know, I'm sharing like very personal things about them, but I'm sure it'll be okay, because this is a very, like, they may not even think there's anything wrong with it, because it's just the life that they live.
Exactly.
It's just how people live in Korea, you know? And it's like, you know, the
that's normal
partner, right? Like the wife has to like serve the man, right? Like the husband, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and like kind of treat him as a king because he's like the head of the household. And like a lot of the women feel like as if they're there to just serve men, you know? And like they're a lot of times emotionally not supported, emotionally neglected, really. And like, you know, my father actually forgot my mother's birthday this year. And I just like broke down crying because like he's emotionally not, like he's just like not present for her. And also like, I felt that within myself, right? As a father, like I wish he was a little bit more loving and emotionally supportive, right?
Right.
And I think that's what we also experience as a whole in this society. That's like a whole nother topic. You know,
we could go on with these topics forever. You have many. I did not know that you were originally from Korea. So we met just a month and a half ago at the I Start First Summit.
Yeah, I think it was just a month and a half ago.
Month and a half ago, I was speaking, and afterwards you and I came up to one another in the audience, and you had said that you were ready to share your story. So you shared just a small piece of introduction of how you ended up here. So we're pretty much at age 10 now. So you're age 10, you moved from Korea abruptly to a small apartment in California. And tell us what happened next.
So, you know, obviously our lives were flipped upside down. I had no idea what was happening. My parents didn't really tell me and my little brother what was going on because we were too young. But my sister, she kind of became like, you know, my mom's only emotional support. And then, you know, we're all trying to just survive and, you know, in that situation individually. I don't think we knew how to like be there for each other because we were just all just like shot, you know, like our nervous systems were shot, like mentally just, you know, like this was a huge disruption. So anyway, long story short, it was a time of confusion and anger. And a lot of resentment went towards my parents. So fast forward to my teenage years and my college years, like I was extremely like, I would say I didn't know that I had trauma. Like I'd experienced trauma until really like over the pandemic, I went through this course. It's called RCYT, Registered Children's Yoga Teacher Program. And it's a trauma-informed yoga teacher program. And like they teach you the different types of trauma. And honestly, I didn't know until when I learned about developmental trauma and shock trauma that like I had that. And so like now my teenage years and my high school and college years makes more sense to me because I was just in a whirlwind, just like, I don't know, a shitstorm of a life. It was just like,
in what way?
I was just so unhappy and angry. Like because of maybe like the lack of skill and communicate, like my parents, I don't think they did a lot of amazing things. I have so much love and honor for my parents. But also there are some things that like they could have done better, right? They didn't know how to speak in a nonviolent way. And so like I adopted a lot of those things, that was modeled, right? So I adopted a lot of those toxic traits. You don't really know any better. You just kind of do
children, you are watching what your parents do. You're emulating them.
We just absorb and we're like sponges and we just think that's normal. So like a lot of the toxic traits that I got in my family dynamic, and kind of like operating with a chip on my shoulder because I'll have to kind of explain this dynamic because a lot of people won't understand, is like I'm the middle child. And
I think if you're a middle child, you might understand.
Yeah.
But if not, you might not.
On top of that, like my sister was my mom's best friend, right? And my younger brother, him being the son of the family, he's treated like the golden child.
Sure.
Everything is kind of tailored to him and like a lot more lenience, so like I felt like alone in my family. Like
your dad had his person, your mom had her person, and there was you.
Yeah. And I'm like, where do I belong?
Sure.
So it's on top of like being a middle child, like just like how Asian cultures favor the son kind of affected me as well. And just like I now know like, and I can accept my parents as who they are. And I've let go a lot of anger and resentment towards them. Like all the, we all make mistakes and we all are doing our best. My mom was actually raised by a single mom. And I didn't really realize this until later in life, like maybe a couple of years ago. I'm like, oh, that is true. Yeah, I had to kind of give her, it allowed me to accept her and like give her so much grace, having said that. And my mother's mom, that's my family's grandma, she was known to be the tiger grandma of the village that she's from. She was like known to be a very scary person. She I think struggled with alcoholism as well and lots of anger. Like
so this violence and anger kind of trickled down.
Exactly.
From there.
Yes. So that's part of it. And also my father's side, I actually just lost my last grandma. She's the only grandparent that was left. She just passed away this week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And yeah, my brother's actually coming back from Korea right now as we speak. The funeral was like 3 days ago. And so she suffered from like some mental issues, which caused a lot of issues in the family. And she... Let me take a breath.
Yes, take a minute.
But yeah, so she, there were some problems on her side that like trickled down to her children, which my dad,
Sure.
And also like, he's the first of 3 sons. So lots of
a lot of pressure, I imagine.
A lot of pressure. Yeah, exactly. And so, just like having said that, right, we really need to look at our parents as like human beings, and just like, I know I held them against the standard of like, oh, what a mother or what a father should be doing, right? My father, he's come a long way as well. So I can say that now, like, he has changed a lot of aspects of himself in his life, and has, put a lot of effort into healing himself, including my mother. So they've been separated for like 10 years. Like, my dad was here in America, or in the US, for 10 years alone. I mean, like, they were living separately, like, from time to time, like over 20 years, I feel like. But my mother actually left to Korea to kind of like pursue her own thing and be free of like the lifestyle that they were living, and which was they were both like devotees of like this Taoist spiritual organization, which also has a big part of like there's a big part in my story, just being part of that. These spiritual organizations could quickly become kind of culty, and I had experienced some things in 2021 that confirmed a lot of things that I had reservations about the leader. And actually, my name isn't Senya, where I wasn't born as Senya. I was born as ģᴏʟɪᴱᴛɪᴄ. ģᴏʟɪᴱᴛ is the name that my grandpa gave me. Is our family name, which is the Lee. So I received the name Yuri from the spiritual leader. And long story short, I no longer wanted to be part of this organization or tied to this person. So that's why I'm Senya today. So a lot of people still may know me as Yuri, but I want to sever that connection with that whole organization and the leader, because everything that I knew was confirmed, and thanks to God, like a miraculous situation actually happened where I asked God, I would love to have a one-on-one time, like quality time with this person, to just have a conversation, because I have some questions. And I got that.
Wow.
2021. And it was just the right amount of time for me to get all my answers. And so here I am today. Like, that's kind of the part of the story that I wanted to share with the world as well. I might be stirring up some people's emotions talking about this, because this is a very huge like organization, like international. Like, they're in Canada, Korea.
Religious organization.
Yes. I wouldn't say religious. They would deny that they're religious or culty, whatever. They'll say they're a spiritual organization.
What felt culty about it?
There's a lot of groupthink involved in there. And I saw the good and the bad and the ugly being on the opposite side, not on the front side, right? There's like a business storefront. What you see out here is very different than what you see on the back end. And I actually like worked as like so this organization, they teach like yoga, meditation, like energy healing, like kind of the deeper like Taoist practices. And I trained in those things early on in life, along with my whole family. And I was like developing my psychic powers, actually, like being able to see through like an envelope without using your eyes, but maybe your mind screen, right? Like ESP, I don't know if some people know ESP, or like a psychic medium, what they do, right? But very much like, so
what made you question this?
Yeah, so there were stories that came up. Like, there's so many things. So I'm like, which one should I talk about, right?
I know. These things we could go on forever. Maybe that's another episode where we dive into it if you're comfortable talking about it.
Honestly, it's kind of like a long story. But I can just tell you right now that a lot of people who work in that organization, they've dedicated, I have so much respect for those masters, 45 years, 30 years of dedication. They leave their family and their country to do this work, including my sister. So my sister's still part of it, so I can't really talk too much shit about it.
Understood.
We fight about it all the time.
Understood.
I have my own experience, and it's valid, because I'm a truth seeker. At the end of the day, I don't take sides on any matter. I'm very like neutral. but I will fight for truth. And that's all I ask God for, right? And so there were many stories, even when we were in Korea here, like there were stories, like if you do look up this organization, there's like news articles about some of the things that this leader did. It's kind of similar to like a Bikram yoga situation, right? Like, you know, sexual assault and things like that. And also like just the way that they not even like take care, but like lack of care like for their employees, just because we were on that end of like, you know, we were like an employee, right? My parents were like masters, and we grew up so poor. I mean, like so poor that we had to like kept requesting for more money because we're just so poor. And it's like, and they actually have so much money. That's the thing. I knew how much money that they had, but the amount of money that they were willing to give their employees was like McDonald's level, if that makes sense, right? Like Walmart, McDonald's.
So all these things made you question. Then you had the opportunity to be able to sit down with this person and ask these questions.
And yeah, I mean, like I could just see it. Like I was there, like I'm at his house, you know, does that make sense? And I had, he had made advances on me, you know, this, all the things that I needed to see and experience, like I got, you know what I mean?
You made your decision, and that's 2021. Yeah. So you left the organization.
Well, I left like a while ago. So I, you know, pretty much, so I'm not just saying this like on a judgment like level. It's like I've literally gone through like most of all the departments that ever existed in that organization. Like I taught in the classes at the centers. I was working at the New York resort that they have, doing like camps and retreats for
So you had
kids.
A really good understanding of what was going
accounting, a corporate office, HR, like all types of stuff. You know what I mean? So I knew like a lot of things that were happening. And, you know, everyone could have a very different experience with them depending on where they're at. A lot of times, I'm going to say this out loud, they are prying on people who are very vulnerable and they don't have direction. And it's like they're looking for like this recognition, this love and connection too. And yeah, maybe they do give that, but on a very
basic
parasitic way. Sure. Is that a word? But yeah, so that's like actually a whole nother story.
So once you left that, then that brings us to.
Yeah. So that's part of my story. So there's lots of layers.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So that's one layer of the things that I was unfolding for myself, because what I'm doing for myself is not only to heal, but really like shed all these layers that no longer serve me, but also like understanding my story. Like, who am I and how did I get here? And so I had to dissect all those layers. That was kind of like a spiritual level, I guess. Like my spirituality, like I needed to sever that to really get to God direct. And like, you know, literally just like change my name, change my whole destiny. I didn't know I can do that. But
you did. You can and you did.
Yes. And so going back to kind of like my childhood story about like my parents, because I think a lot of us can relate to this, is that, you know, the man and the woman of our lives are actually our parents, you know, our first man and our first woman.
Yes.
You know? And they do have a lot of impact on you, whether you know it or not. And I truly believe that our spirit chooses our parents, right? We come into this life choosing our family dynamic. Our karmic path is all entangled into what we're experiencing, right? Because there's something there that we still need to uncover for ourselves. And whether it's to heal or to, I don't know, I guess it's always to heal, right? We have to heal it, alchemize it, and grow from it and thrive, right? So having said my parents, you know, their background and honestly, a lot of my life, I feel like I was just angry at my parents. And I think there's a lot of the confusion that came with the move and me having resentment against my parents because I I ended up being like the weirdo in the world, because like when I was young, and I was just like resenting the fact that I am Korean, I am Asian, right? I like even Korea like experienced like not wanting to be its own heritage. Like we're fixing our face through plastic surgery and like nitpicking people's faces, how they dress, their hair. Like it's just so toxic. Like I grew up with that. And yeah, that's why like that whole topic earlier when I talked about how like we've lost the connection to our own culture, our own heritage is like, you know, because of the westernization of our country.
Sure.
And pop culture, all of that. I mean, there's good to it, but also I feel like there's a fine line between like being creative and innovative versus like really staying rooted in the authenticity of your culture and your heritage. So just like, so I'm like, I felt so like apart from it. I was trying to like neglect that part of me for so long, honestly, like, because it made me different. It just made me different, right? The way I thought, the way I, you know, lived my life, the food that I ate, the language that I spoke, it was just completely different. And then, of course, me coming from Korea, you know, to the US overnight, like overnight change, huge shocker. It was harder for me to assimilate into this country.
Sure.
So, and maybe if it would have been different if I was maybe Christian. I don't know. But because I was deeply like Taoist and kind of Buddhist, more Eastern spiritual belief.
Made it even more difficult.
Yes, it made it so much more difficult. And any time I spoke, everyone like ridiculed me. So this is also why like I have this.
You lost your accent.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
On purpose?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably on purpose. I studied communication in college. I study like people who are very well spoken. Like
yes, you are very well spoken.
Thank you. I never would have said that about myself ever. But I've come a long way. I failed public speaking 3 times in business school.
How is this even possible? Like sitting here next to you and listening to you talk, and if you're watching,
I know
see.
It's hard to believe. And like I was an extreme introvert. Like because obviously you could already like by just even the little bit I've shared about my childhood, it's like I had to like I didn't know how to exist, so I had to like have this hard shell around me. Yeah. I was just trying to protect myself, and I was in like survival mode majorly, like everybody in my family. But yeah, like I got kicked out of business school because I failed public speaking. That is a required course.
Look at you now.
Yeah, I know. So this is a really big milestone for me. So thank you for having me on the show. This is my first time.
It's my pleasure.
But yeah, so I actually was told to shut up a lot, even in my family.
How dare they?
I was silenced in so many spaces, on so many levels. And because I was actually like spiritually a very powerful child, like my spiritual gifts were so open at that, like when I was maybe like 8, 9, 10. And then like, I think I closed it up close to junior high time. But like I was actively working as that, like a medium, like a psychic intuitive. And like I would speak truth, but it would trigger the shit out of people. And so they would tell me, you're young, you don't know anything, shut up. You know, there's no place for you here.
Truth
you know what
is
you're
sometimes
saying.
Hard to hear.
Yeah. And so not only that, I just remember like a lot of adults did not like to hear from me. And also in like at least Korean culture, like we do not talk back to elders, like your mom and dad. Like, so also why I was always a rebellious child that did talk back. And like my father would always be like, be like your sister, or like be like your brother, be more obedient, right? Just bow your head and just listen. So I'm like, for some reason, my spirit did not like that. I did not. I'm like, no.
I sense that about you.
I'm speaking truth. I'm speaking truth to you, and I want to have a conversation because this is unfair.
Yes.
Right? So instead of like really listening to me, like, or even like giving me a chance to like speak, just they were like always yelling. And they were very explosive parents, kind of emotionally explosive. Also me, like I ended up becoming that as well because that's what was modeled. And
Sure.
My nervous system was also shot from all the, traumatic experience that I experienced as a child, and just never having that support, right? I was just like a ticking bomb. I would say I was trigger happy for a good 20 years.
So how did that translate into and this is one of the things that I know you wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
How did that translate into your relationships?
100%. So I'm actually 32. A lot of people will not know that.
Because you look so much younger.
I look 10 years younger, yes. Asian don't age, right?
You don't. That beautiful skin.
My mother actually has better skin than me. It's crazy. But she's also in Korea. She has all the access to good skincare, But yeah, like this is the topic I really wanted to dive into is that like, I didn't even know that I was attracting people that came with violence because I was used to violence and I had such a tolerance for it that I didn't even know there was a problem, honestly, until like, I'm like, oh yeah, everyone gets angry. Sure. Like everyone gets upset. Yeah, I can lose it too. I'm sure like I'm probably like a recovering, like, what do you call those people? Like I probably
manic. Was it manic? No.
Maybe, I don't know. Like I also had like very explosive personality. I was very combative. Like I said, I was kind of like a ticking bomb, and like I only knew how to speak with violence as well. So also why I studied nonviolent communication.
And in what way, when you say you only knew you were attracting violence and you only knew how to respond with violence, are we talking words, throwing things? What's the context of it?
Yes, thank you. Like literally everything, like you said, the way I speak, the way I even like felt like in my brain, how I would react. And I did get physical, like with my sister. Sometimes we would like throw things at each other, or like physically fighting, right? And yeah, I feel like emotionally, I just didn't know how to calm myself. Like it's at the end of the day, I didn't know how to regulate my nervous system.
Sure.
Right. Because I didn't know that was a thing.
It's what you witnessed. You grew up with it. It seemed normal. This is all these things that we don't realize that are ingrained in us as children.
We just have to fight for, to speak and like to be seen. And, like if something isn't going your way, you just kind of have to get loud,
And also that some of that probably relates to you being told so many times that your opinion did not matter and to be quiet or as you say, to shut up. And so then making that even worse, you have experienced a good amount of violence in the past. You're attracting somebody that's violent. You yourself are responding with violence. And then also fear of not being able to speak or say what you want to say is even more dysregulating to the nervous system.
Absolutely. You nailed it. So yeah, not only that, but like attracting men that are emotionally unavailable. And I used to actually say like, why am I attracting these people? But like,
I know why. I did that too.
Yeah.
Keep going.
But the biggest, I guess, revelation and also the hardest pill to swallow is to accept that maybe I was emotionally unavailable. And like, I didn't know, a lot of my friends know this, but like, I didn't even know the word vulnerability until a couple of years ago. Like, what is that? And what is intimacy? And like, what is emotional safety? No idea. But like, yeah, I was able to dive into all these things because of the pandemic, because pre-pandemic, I was like running. I felt like I was like one of my friends literally told me I'm like the Usain Bolt of my life. Like I would just be like going. I'm actually a professional samba performer. I used to go to music festivals.
Oh, goodness.
I'm a Latin dancer. I had a full-time job. Like I used to lead a hiking group. I love putting gatherings together. You know what I mean? Just like
I'm smiling because I know. I know what you mean. And then, this is also all to prevent feeling,
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm like, right. Like literally,
know.
as I'm like, I feel like
Sounds so good on paper, though.
Right.
What a go-getter.
Right. While you're like miserable and you're like, I still feel really lonely and lost, like
even though doing all of these things
all
that
the
bring me
things.
happiness, but I'm still feeling
I'm like
lonely.
reaching and reaching
Yes,
externally.
for many things.
Yeah.
You kept going.
Yeah.
Lots of things.
Yeah. So I'm so grateful. I know there's, many people had, experienced what they needed to experience during the pandemic, but I'm sure it was all alchemizing for each of us in a different way. And for me, it was like, I was just stopped in my tracks.
How?
Actually, it stopped before the pandemic. For some reason, November of 2019, I lost not like literally like lost them, but like they got removed out of my life. Then like all of my close friends that we've been friends for almost 9 years, I believe. And we used to go to, like, we all danced together and we used to go to music festivals together, do drugs together, and I thought they cared about me like I had them in my heart, but come to realize they don't. Right? This is all part of the lesson, right? Because I'm like self-abandoning myself to reach for love because I never got that love in my family. Like, I never really felt the safe, like I needed to earn the love, right? We all struggle with this, is that we feel like we need to actually like do something, like earn it, like do something to get love. But honestly, like the truth of the matter is we all deserve love because we exist, right? That statement has really like
helped
me on so many levels. But yeah, just to remind myself constantly that I deserve love simply because I exist, right? That was like completely, like out of this world concept for me. But yeah, like all the things that I was doing in my life, I mean, I got myself in so many weird, horrific situations where I did kind of put myself in dangerous situations where, it's funny because in here, I knew like I shouldn't be here, but I'm here anyway, and honestly, like, yeah, like almost re-traumatizing myself because I was on this train of self-abandonment because I'm trying to feel some kind of love or connection with other people, right? And so all of this is actually stemming from like my childhood,
absolutely,
dynamic, like what I've experienced, right? I'm just like, I'm alone, and it's not even just like, I feel like even like a lot of my Korean friends, I feel they can relate to this story, even if it's not exact, because just being an immigrant, being an immigrant.
I know, an immigrant, yes.
Or even just having parents that are immigrants could really impact them because of how different their inner world and their outer world really is, right? What does our world look like in the household versus out there? There's such a dissonance. And that's what I experienced. It's like there's so much dissonance between within myself, not only that, but out here and out there, so I was just completely lost. And I'm like, sorry for people who experienced me when I was like trauma ridden and I was acting out of line, like I get it.
Give you grace, perhaps,
please.
Now knowing this story, because you've done a tremendous amount of work. And the last several years from what you've explained, and then even putting yourself in the position and having the bravery to come on today and talk about all of these things, which is one of the last steps to really fully healing. So I've been told, many people have told me that once you actually get it out and can talk about it openly, as eloquently as you have, it really is tremendous. You can tell that you've done an extraordinary amount.
Yeah, I mean, still working on it.
We all are.
But I do have to give myself credit and acknowledge myself for how far I've come. And I was processing a lot of this stuff actually even just this past Sunday with a half Korean, half white friend that just came into my life. And she was able to hold some space for me regarding all these matters. And it's hard for me to even process sometimes when you're by yourself, right? Like you sometimes just need like that one person to hold space for that. And I know how I show up. It all depends like on the person, like who I'm talking to. Like, are they strong enough to hold this space? If I don't feel like they could, my throat will already be like closed up. But I feel like God, source creator, he's been really like it has been helping me really like come into like my own power and like really coming out of my shell, my hermit mode, because I'm always taking the back seat. I feel like last week, like last month was Asian Heritage Month. So I'm going to share like a little miracle story because this is part of it. This podcast is part of it. But also I was asked to sing a Korean traditional folk song. I hate singing. I already told you I failed public speaking 3 times in college. You can't see me singing. You know what I mean? Like I don't sing. I hate singing. And also I'm terrified of like, actually speaking in public. And not only that, I have trouble remembering lyrics. So I feel like I just got English like 2 years ago, honestly. But I was asked the night before this event at APS. They were doing this Asian Heritage Month event. And they hired like Asian Media Network and like, they were like the Chinese dragon performers, Chinese Peking duck opera dancer, and like different things there. Like I think there was like a Laos dancer. And I did the singing performance. And when she asked me, like my boss, my life, she was like, hey, can you dance or sing? I'm like, yeah, I'm a dancer, but I only know like how to do like Latin Brazilian. She's like, well, can you sing something? And I'm like, yes. Something in me was like, you should say yes and you're gonna do this. And so I literally was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I only know how to sing this one song, which is actually very appropriate. The Arirang is actually a very well loved, widely known Korean traditional song. And there's actually like and I think it's like an orchestra in New York. They actually like played it as an orchestra song, like an orchestra music. And it's like absolutely beautiful. Like it'll bring you to tears. But that's the only song I remember the lyrics to. And like, if I ever go to karaoke, you'll never find me like singing anything.
Not my favorite
like, I just can't do lyrics. I don't know why. So anyway, I actually like wore the Korean traditional dress and went in the middle of their lobby, and they had like video cameras, like everyone has their like phone up, and like there were like staff like all around me, and I had the mic, and I'm like, holy shit, my voice is gonna be amplified.
Big time.
Yeah. And I actually sang the song, and I only practiced like obviously maybe once or twice because I was asked
for you,
the night before. And then surprisingly, I got a lot of compliments. Like everyone's like, "Oh my god, that was so good! How long have you been doing this for?"
You're like, just now.
Just now.
This is the first time.
The
Might be the last,
like, wow,
but the first.
That was so beautiful. Like just like my team, the staff, like everyone just really like gave me a lot of like compliments. I was like, this is crazy. I was like, I'm just gonna do this just for my own, right? I just kind of did it to overcome my own fear.
Sure.
Part of the reason why I became a samba dancer 9 years ago is because I had stage fright. So everything that I do in my life, the reason why I said it's a little neurotic is because I will put myself in an uncomfortable situation where I suck at something. Like, yeah, to overcome that fear. Because ultimately we all want to be free, right? We all want to be free from the fear that we feel on a physical, like, I mean, I feel like we have a lot of blocks, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. We have these blocks, right? And in order for us to really liberate ourselves from these things is to heal them and like face them really like face to face, right? Like face to face and be honest with ourselves, right? Like I had to be honest about like, oh, I am really scared of being seen. And not only that, like I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. So I saw these women on stage dancing their asses off. It was like their first, it was our team's first national competition. And I just saw the women on stage and I was like, holy moly, like they just inspired the shit out of me. Like to dance in like a blingy bikini with feathers and they're just going for it like 1000% on the stage, right? Like they don't care if their belly's flapping and their thighs shaking.
They are free.
Their wardrobe is falling apart. They don't care, you know? And I was like, that is some badass shit. And I started going to class and then I became a professional dancer. And now like I teach sometimes too, but like part of the journey like of like what I'm serving the world with is, you know, dance empowerment, you know, really bringing women back into their bodies because ultimately we need to feel safe in our bodies. We need to feel comfortable, like own this vessel that we have. And like, and a lot of that really like, yeah, I felt so disjointed, like, you know, in pieces when I was young, right? Like for most of my life, I felt so disembodied. And even eating well, actually, even like choosing the things in our life like has to come from a very embodied place, right? Our mind, body, spirit aligned. And we can't do that if we don't have a good baseline. You know, we don't have this connection within ourselves that allows us to make those wise decisions, right? With the awareness, like where does our awareness come from? But, you know, it's been a long journey for me. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not like, oh, one day it just happened. No, we have to work on it like every fucking moment of the day. I mean, like every situation that triggers you, we have to take a step back and like, am I going to show up as this or this, right? These moment of choices. Because at the end of the day, it's all choice. Because maybe if I didn't make the choice to, you know, choose to face my fears or choose to own my, you know, all the wrongs that I did, or like, how should I say this? Like, if I didn't choose to want better for myself, I wouldn't be here. Right?
I think this is obvious from coming from you. And the ultimate, would you say the ultimate takeaway from, at least from what I'm hearing, is that face your fears. Mm-hmm. And when you face your fears, you actually have the ability to be able to be free.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what I gather from
you.
And
honestly, like that's what you inspired me to do. Like with the story that you shared, is that you are facing that big thing that you were like suppressing, and like you're like almost, you know, why should I even talk about this kind of thing, right? Like I felt like we all kind of like tried to hide that dark side of us. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is like, no matter what story we all have, like that's where the juiciness happens, right?
Yes, it is.
When we turn to the dark side, right? Like it's not about like light and love. It really isn't. But to really be full, like be whole, right? And be fully expressed, like, and allow those parts to be there and accept those dark parts. Absolutely. I feel like that's what made me really whole. You know, like I could be doing all these like really light, fun stuff, you know, all the ceremonies and rituals and spiritual things and hiking, nature, blah, 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 all the healing stuff too, but also like fun, like light stuff. But also like, to me, I love the shadow work, because the shadow work is really when we get to do the real work.
Absolutely. And those shadows are what make us who we are. So speaking of who you are, how do we find you? What's the best way of being able to find you?
The best way to find me is through Instagram.
And your Instagram is?
At Senya_Starlight, SENYA_STARLIGHT.
And we'll have a link to that at the end of the episode. So everybody will be able to see in the bottom of the podcast a link straight to your Instagram. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show today. It was an honor. I'm glad to have heard some of your story. And it sounds like there are maybe some future episodes that you may be hearing. That is You're It Girl, everybody.